ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome back to Durian ASEAN. You're with Gowri here today on a Tuesday morning. And just now you heard our brand new program called The Morning Brew, which will go on air every Monday to Friday at 8 o'clock to entertain you with a lot of ASEAN facts and other social-cultural news and updates around the region before we move on to some serious politics and economic news at 8:30. I hope you enjoyed that one. Please let us know your feedback on our Facebook and Twitter pages. And right now we will be discussing the political updates from all over the region, and this is ASEAN Daily. The first news that we have from today is an update about the bombing in Thailand that happened at the Erawan Shrine, and it seems that the police are seeking a woman and an unidentified man over Bangkok bomb. And they are probing August 17th's deadly bomb blast in Bangkok. And they have issued 2 arrest warrants for these 2 suspects. And although their identities are still unknown, the police are quite sure that it was these 2 people who are the main suspects in the Erawan Shrine bombing. And 2 weeks after the unprecedented attack to the city's commercial center, the motive is still unclear. It's still somewhat covered in mystery, and there's been a lot of suspicions between Thailand's political rivals in the country itself, between the yellow shirts and the red shirts, or is it the minority groups, is it extremist militants, is it the rebels in the kingdom, and could it even be sympathizers of refugees from China's Uyghur minority? And police are now seeking these 2 people, a Thai woman and an unidentified man, after bomb-making materials were discovered over the weekend in an apartment in the suburb of Minburi. Investigators also believe that it was used as a hideout by the network that carried out the attack. And apart from that, police have also detained an unidentified foreign man on Saturday morning at another flat nearby, where detonators, industrial pipes, ball bearings were all found. And there were also dozens of Turkish passports that were found in that flat, according to the investigations that were carried out. And in a television broadcast, Prawut, who is the chief police in Thailand, displayed a photograph of the wanted Thai woman and as well as the man. And the Thai woman was shown wearing a hijab, whereas the man, well, there was only a facial identification of him. Based on some recounts of passers-by. And the hunt is, the great news here is that, of course, the hunt has narrowed down. Although no group really has claimed any responsibility for the attack yet, but there has been some speculations to fill the information gap with the ruling junta and the police as well, who tend to be contradicting each other in when it comes to the investigation. And of course, the authorities are trying really hard to play down any suggestion that this attack could be caused by international terrorists or even targeted at Chinese visitors, because it's a nation where tourism represents 10% of the economy. Might not sound like much, but that's actually a huge amount of contribution to the tourism industry in Thailand. And that is the update on Monday, which was just yesterday. Police Chief Somyot Pulanmongs told the reporters that the suspect's interrogation has yielded some very useful information in a televised briefing that happened yesterday, but they have not ruled out any scenarios, and they're also working with several embassies to try to ascertain the identity of the man who's being held in military custody. And it seems that he's also not very cooperating, partly because he's not quite an English speaker, and they have to bring in multiple translators in order to facilitate the case. And apart from that, let's move on to a few events that happened over the weekend. And of course, one of it is Bersih 4.0, which happened on Saturday all the way into Sunday, when the crowd dispersed after singing the national anthem. anthem. And Bersih supporters turned KL roads into seas of yellow, according to Asian News Network. And, well, a lot of people, I think the reported number was 200,000 people who showed up for the Bersih rally, and it was not only covered by the local media but all over the world as well, including BBC, some French, German media as well. As you can see, some news circulating on Facebook. And although some media has been reporting that the number is only about probably 20,000, but if you take a look at all the pictures, it's pretty clear that it's a lot more than that. And although the start time was 2 p.m., it seems that thousands of people already started gathering in the morning itself, just to be safe, just to sort of book their spot in Merdeka Square, where 58 years ago, of course, the flag was raised on our Independence Day. And by the time all 5 groups marched towards the vicinity of the square at 5 p.m., they have already claimed an attendance of 200,000 people, 8 times the official police estimate. And about 6 p.m., the crowds stretched for hundreds of meters along the roads. If you take a look at all the pictures, looks like little minions. The whole road just looks yellow. The entire city, actually, the whole city center in Kuala Lumpur. And although Prime Minister Najib was not around in Kuala Lumpur, he was addressing a division of his UMNO party in his home state in Pahang, where he sort of derided the protesters as being shallow and poor in their patriotism for interfering with national level Independence Day events. And unlike previous Bersih rallies, the crowds were not dispersed by the police using any tear gas, any water cannons, and although there were some trucks seen nearby and some military was spotted nearby as well. But having said that, whether it's low patriotism or poor display of patriotism for the country, whatever it is, I think there are even people still questioning whether or not Bersih is effective, whether it's right or wrong. But I think the important thing here is that these 200,000 people or more went out and made their point to show that they know their rights and they're not happy with the current government. And of course, we have to remember that just because you're not happy with the government doesn't mean that you do not love your country. Those are two very, very different things. And so, well, I would say congratulations to the Bersih supporters for making their point, but we'll have to wait and see what exactly will be the outcome of this event. And speaking of protest, another protest was happening in Manila over the weekend as well. It seems like a slew of protests going on, where thousands in Manila joined third night in church protests, and the traffic came to a halt at busy intersections of Manila's main highway on Sunday as thousands of members of Christian groups occupied the road for a third night. That's right. They are taking it one step beyond our Malaysians, where we had protests for 1 night, 2 days, but this one has been ongoing for the third night in a row. And these people are actually waving miniature versions of the red, white, and green flag of their church. Members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, converged on the highway, some walking also to with umbrellas to protect themselves from the rain. And it seems that the rain could not even slow them down. There are some church leaders who said that this case resulted from the infighting over the use of church funds and was an internal matter, and the government should not interfere. So what's happening here is that there has been some internal fight or internal feud within the church members, and some scandals, some controversies that has been happening. A lot of news has been leaking from the church, and when the government is interfering, the church is not too happy about that and said that the government should stay away and not interfere with church matters, and they're trying to establish a clear separation between the church and the state. And while that might seem like a good thing, in the case where there's a lot of controversies and scandals present in the church, it will probably be a little wise for the government to step in and see what's exactly going on, and what are some of the highlighted cases that's been happening in the secretive Christian group, which is one of the largest among the indigenous Christian groups in the country, with about 2 million members. And the case highlighted some cracks within the group as well. And the one on trial here is, of course, Iglesia Ni Cristo, the one that I mentioned earlier. And they have to show their unity and the strength, according to a representative from the church. And presidential spokesman Herminio Coloma said in a text message that the government does not usually interfere with internal matters, and adding that its duty was bound to take up complaints by any citizen or entity. And I would completely agree with that. As much as they want to stay away and establish that separation, if there has been complaints as the government, they have the right to step in and find out what exactly is going on. And the crowd at the highway cheered as more members joined them in Manila for the protest, and it's likely to extend. So we'll see if it's still ongoing or if either side is going to give in, and we'll definitely update you on that one. And one final news on protests, which is probably about to happen, is in Indonesia, where the workers were planning to rally on Tuesday, which is today, and a labor rally involving 50,000 workers in Greater Jakarta, also known as Jabodetabek, is set to be held on Tuesday. And according to the Confederation of Indonesian Workers, the chairman said that the workers will be gathering at the Hotel Indonesia Traffic Circle and march to the Presidential Palace and visit the Manpower Ministry of Manpower Ministry and Health Ministry offices. So why are they doing this? That's a good question. The workers, who come from various organizations, will actually call on the government to lower prices of essential goods and fuel, and they will also be protesting layoffs due to the weakening of the rupiah and the economic slowdown. So that is starting to hit hard on the people in Indonesia. And another thing that they will be rejecting is also foreign workers coming to Indonesia and calling on the government to raise the minimum wage up to 22% in 2016. And this was said in a press release as quoted by tribunenews.com. And other areas of demands in the press release were revision of government regulation of pensions so that workers' pension plans are similar to the civil servants and do not carry an increased health insurance contribution. And we also want the Industrial Relations Court to be dismissed by revising Law Number 2, 2004 this year. And for more information, of course, you can refer to the Jakarta Post, or you can wait for us to update you as well in the next ASEAN Daily. And I'm going to play you a very quick song, and when we come back, we'll talk about the economy news in Southeast Asia.
You're now listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.
The voice of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome back to Durian ASEAN. You're still with Gowri here on our ASEAN Daily. And for this part, let's move on with our politics and economy news commentary for this morning. And a little update from what's happening in Myanmar. It seems that they are banning parties from criticizing the army, and that's not something that's very shocking, I would say, because they have banned any political parties from criticizing the army or the military. Well, it's understandable considering that Myanmar is a military-dominated constitution in state media during the campaigning for elections, and all this criticizing of the military was seen as a test of the country's transition from the military rule. And they do have an election coming up very soon in November. And as much as they want to do away with the military government, head towards a more democratic system, but it seems like they are still quite sensitive when it comes to anyone questioning or criticizing the military or the army in the country. And the parties standing in the November 8 elections will be allowed to broadcast 15-minute speeches on television and radio, and that's what's prompted the government to come up with the statement to tell these political parties to make sure not to speak ill of the military or the military-dominated constitution in the country, because at the end of the day, we still have to respect that the constitution is military-based. And there's a lot of statements from the officials also saying that the Ministry of Information could reject if the addresses actually and the speeches actually violate the rules that has been set by the Ministry of Information. And the parties should also not disrespect the 2008 Constitution, which reserves 25% of Parliament and key cabinet posts for the military, or giving it an effective veto over politics. And well, it's hard not to pass a sarcastic comment right here, because Myanmar itself is trying to head towards a democratic system, but it's so hard when you still uphold the strength of military in your country. And if no one can say anything about it, no one can criticize it, no one can even say anything, they're not allowed to mention the word military in their speech, then how exactly do you encourage a discourse or a dialogue or a healthy debate in the country to find out what works and what doesn't, and is the military system really effective or not? And well, the National League for Democracy, NLD, is expected to win the elections, but they also struck a defiant tone in response to the government guidelines. And a member of NLD's top governing body said, "We are not afraid. We will continue to criticize whoever we want and however we want." And I think that's the spirit when you're having elections or trying to go for a government reform. And of course, after 49 years, the military in 2011 established a semi-civilian government and freed hundreds of political prisoners and opened up the economy in the country. And still in Myanmar, slightly more positive news, where they have managed to set $2.8 daily minimum wage to boost investment. And Myanmar has set a minimum wage to $2.8 for an 8-hour workday. And a move that is likely to boost investment in the country's fast-growing garment industry. And this decision on the minimum wage, which follows 2 years of often acrimonious debate between garment factory owners, labor unions, was announced on Saturday. And that's right, it's an ongoing feud between the garment factory and the labor unions, which has been trying to fight for the rights of their workers who are sometimes overworked, or sometimes there are children, there are pregnant women who don't get the rest that they deserve. And once a very thriving industry, Myanmar's garment sector was actually hit hard after sanctions imposed by the US, and they were also stripped of trade benefits and abandoned by brands who feared that the reputational risk associated with the former junta could possibly affect their industry. And in line with this, the Myanmar lawmakers passed a minimum wage law in 2013, but the people were still not too happy that they felt that the minimum wage was way too minimum for them and that it was not enough, and they continued to push for it. And I'm glad to see that they have finally managed to increase the minimum wage up to 3,600 kyat for an 8-hour workday. And moving on from there, we have also slightly positive news from East Timor, where they gained the ASEAN Observer status this year. And the East Timor should obtain their ASEAN Observer status in ASEAN before the end of this year. This was said by the country's Economic Affairs Coordinator and Agriculture and Fisheries Minister, Estanislao da Silva. And the newest country in the Southeast Asia region presented its official membership application to ASEAN in 2011, but the only country that has shown reservations is Singapore. I think a lot of the other countries are okay. They don't really have a problem with East Timor joining ASEAN. And Da Silva has told news agencies that for the time being, the country will be granted observer status, and possibly in a year or two, they will be a part of ASEAN as well. And ASEAN has said that they still have a lot to do to meet the criteria demanded. And I think this is just giving East Timor a bit of a hard time, because they are actually doing very well as a country. It's a debt-free nation, very liberal and progressive state, and I would think that they are doing a bit better from some of the ASEAN countries at the moment, and hopefully whatever problems that East Timor is facing will not really be an impeding factor for them to join ASEAN, because at the end of the day, we all have our own problems that we need to resolve, because even in Malaysia itself, we have a ton of issues that is making international headlines for the wrong reasons, and we are also not quite getting a good reputation on an international arena. So we'll see if East Timor makes the cut or not, and definitely keep you guys updated on that as well. And let's move on to the closing news for today, where we're talking about Diversecity 2015, which is happening in Malaysia. And this, in conjunction with Independence Day yesterday, actually was the launch of Diversecity 2015. And if you're wondering what is Diversecity, it's a whole month of arts festival ranging from dance, music, literature, and it will be happening from throughout the whole month. And most of the events are actually free in order to make art accessible to all. And even if you have to pay, the tickets will only be between 20 to 40 ringgit. And this was clarified by Datin Sunita at the press conference which took place yesterday. And there's a lot of local organizations participating as well. Sutra Foundation, Dual Space Theatre, Alam Wakaka, Amanda Brown, and they're bringing in a lot of international artists as well to entertain you guys. And the festival director also added that she would strongly encourage everyone to visit as many performances as possible. The whole month, there'll be workshops, there'll be performances, there'll be showcases, and you're welcome to join all of it, because this is one of the very few very rare opportunities where we will be showcasing the best talents in Malaysia as well as in the region, and all this will be happening right here in Kuala Lumpur. And some of the countries participating is Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Myanmar, India, Japan, Korea, and outside of Asia, we have the United States, Australia, and even New Zealand. It sounds like a very exciting lineup right there. Please make sure to check out Diversecity happening starting today up until the end of September. And of course, for more information, you can go to www.diversecity.my. And that wraps up the ASEAN Daily for this morning. Of course, don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the daily podcasts on news and live interviews. And apart from that, also, if you're on the go, you want to listen to Durian ASEAN, download the Durian ASEAN app on your smartphone, and you'll be tuned into us. And coming up, we have also a couple of programs for you. We have an interview happening after this at 9 o'clock, and also ASEAN Biz happening later at 10 o'clock. So stay tuned to Durian ASEAN.